Welcome to Familiar Territory, an anime podcast hosted by two white dudes who've been friends for over 15 years. Here we talk about the history and influence of anime, as well as review anime new and old. So grab your talking cap and transform into some comfy clothes as we step into a familiar territory. My name is Grant.
And I'm Brantley. Heads up, spoilers on the way. Check the description, see if you're safe to listen. GX. Symphogear GX. Do you like this bit?
I literally listened. I literally listened to the Symphogear G episode on the way home from work today as a way to kind of make sure that we don't go over the same things that we did last time. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if we started it the same exact way except added X to?
I'm glad that we have the same wavelength of brain activity.
Bad jokes.
Yeah. I don't know what the amplitude of that wave is. It might be like our last light before we just fade into obscurity, but hey.
We can't fade into obscurity if we've always been obscure.
Yeah.
So we watched Symphogear GX and the Symphogear saga that we have given ourselves.
Third season.
So the third season of Symphogear GX is basically the same thing. It came out in 2015, which is actually about the time that I watched it. So when I watched this in like the winter of 2015. So I was there for this one to come out. I was all out when it was done, but this was like, oh shit, there's 3 seasons of this. And then I like the 4th season got confirmed after I watched Symphogear GX. So
what drew you to Symphogear? What made you look at like the season shows and say, I think I'm gonna try this one?
So I think I talked about this a little in the first episode, but someone showed me Symphogear and they explained the premise to it, and then I accidentally watched the first episode of GX first. And that is the explosion space flight scene. And I thought that that's how the show started, and I was very confused. And then I realized it was the 3rd season. I didn't know it was coming out at the time. I actually had zero idea what's going on, but I still hold... I mean, I haven't seen the last 2 seasons. We are currently, now with finishing the season, Brantley and I have seen the same amount of Symphogear. How do you feel?
Unsettling, to say the least.
But Symphogear GX is, in my opinion, the best out of the 3 seasons we've seen. What do you think about that?
I'd agree. It's not that it's wholly better. It's more good, more bad. It's everything goes up. So there's just more of it. So yeah. But I would say if I have to put a score to it, which, you know, I can't auto score it. I'm not like the villains of this shit. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Hey, luckily I'm the one who edits this shit. But I would say this is the first time I'd consider breaking this up into a 6 out of 10 rather than a 5.
Yeah.
Compared to season 1 and 2. So there's that.
I think that this show, Symphogear GX, tries the hardest, and not even just within its own plot structure, but it tries to give the characters more things to do.
It's a lot more structured, yeah.
And just so you know, the full test is Symphogear GX. Believe in justice and hold determination to fist. So that's the full thing. It at least ends. It's not like a run-on sentence. It has an ending to it. So a quick breakdown of the plot. So
Hey, before you get into the plot, yes, this is the beef stroganoff season.
It is the beef stroganoff season, and I
know that's what everyone's here for. So, yes, you found the right episode.
So it starts off with Chris, Tsubasa, and Hibiki flying into space to stop a rocket from crashing into the Earth.
And what does that rocket contain, Grant?
It contains the body of Mom from Symphogear G, which they went to space to retrieve. And like the opening's nuts. It's just absolutely batshit in every single way. You have a part where they punch through the K2 mountain so hard that it becomes the third highest mountain instead of the second highest mountain, which is whack. But I think that's, like, at that point, you're like, all right, Symphogear is fully self-aware.
Yeah, ironically, that is the high point of the series.
I think that,
or at least at that point, right? Where you're watching that episode, that mountain dropping a few meters is in fact the high point of the show.
Yes, I think
2 for 2 on extremely bad jokes too. So,
I mean, if we tally up everything, you're like 200 for 200 on terrible jokes. That was mean. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you're just telling it like it is, Grant.
So I think the Symphogear GX's self-awareness is both like super nice and also terrible. Mm-hmm. I think at this point it knows how to manipulate. I think it's a little manipulative. It's like, aha, people want to see this whack shit, so we're gonna give them the whack shit. The problem with that is that they keep giving it to you without it kind of making sense a lot of the time. So the big plot is with the Symphogear, the evil Symphogear users now becoming friends, and there's not much more in the world to care about. So all the characters are living their carefree lives, and Maria is a dog of the UN pretending to be an idol so that she can avoid controversy of her being an idol after she tried to, destroy the world. So she and Tsubasa are touring together, classic Symphogear bullshit. And this cult of alchemists shows up, headed by a girl named Carol and her 4 auto scorers, which are basically marionette women. They show up, and the character designs are fun for the villains. They want to destroy the world because Carol, the alchemist, her dad died, and forever ago, in the Renaissance era of her being a wizard. She comes from, it's called the Abyss of Europe, and she basically has constantly
also known as Great Britain. Sorry. I forgot this wasn't our Burn the Witch episode. Sorry. Continue.
So she's basically lived for centuries by constantly putting her memories into bodies of homunculus. And she wants to dissect the world. It's not a great plot. The motivation for the villains is terrible. And I don't think it matters too much. And her auto scorers are Leur, who shoots coins, Gary, who is a shark girl with water powers, Micah, who has lava powers, and then Farah, who has wind powers. And it's really neat because they're dancers, so they all do dances instead of singing. I liked it a lot.
I dig that a lot, yeah. It's very fun.
So, I mean, shit happens, things go down, and in the end the villain is redeemed, and everything is all hunky-dory. There's not much to the season in terms of that, and like the overarching plot. You do get some pretty good fight scenes. I think these shows' fight scenes are really fun. I think they still use the noise, except they're different. But the fight scenes between the Autoscores and the Symphogear users is pretty intense. There's a lot of good animation. And for like the first 4 or 5 episodes, no one has a W. Everyone gets their ass kicked. And feels bad.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted to ask, like, how do you take to that? Like, did you enjoy that part of the show, or was that slogging on you?
So here's the shit that's whack about this. So as of episode 3, like, I think everybody but Hibiki has lost their Symphogear because they were destroyed by the Autoscorers. Mm-hmm. And it's supposed to be painted as this incredibly large, like, terrible event.
It's a big deal.
It's supposed to be a big deal. And they sing about beef stroganoff.
Yeah. It's some whiplash, man.
I think that there was one moment where it was a slog. And it's the beach episode. Which,
yeah.
Because they don't win a fight for so long. And it feels a little weird because despite them losing, the Autoscorers never kill them because they don't really want to kill them. They just want to destroy the Symphogears and die by the Symphogears so that they can send data back to Carol. So if they defeat them, they stop fighting them. So it makes it a little not upsetting. It just kind of sucks because them losing doesn't have much of a plot device except like, boo, you lost. Not that I want any of the characters to get murked, but it felt super disjointed having them lose and then it continuing.
Yeah, the stakes are really low. Once you acknowledge that, like, oh, these characters are going to lose a fight and then that's it. We have this very, like, Tokusatsu Power Rangers style of, like, oh no, we lost, better try again. It kind of it really cuts off the thrusters of the show.
Yeah. But outside of that, I think this show, this season has a lot of really good character development, which is a whack thing to say about Symphogear. I think that the B team in this season carries it really, really well, and that's like Maria, Kirika, and Shirabe.
It feels like they got stepped up from B team to like B plus team.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that a little bit more, but when I said character development, you kind of went,
we'll get there. I think it rests in themes. The characters do undergo change in this season.
This is daddy issues the season. Everybody has problems with their parents.
Yeah, that's sort of a core part of it. But in essence, I would agree with you in saying that there's a very strict structure in this season, which is about lose the fight and then learn something and then win the fight. And that almost makes it easier to follow. Watching this show is kind of like a glide, where, like, I don't want to say you've turned your brain off, because I don't think that happens, but it becomes less effortful because it's more automatic. Your brain can make certain assumptions about how this goes, and so, in the same sense that you don't have to think about how you walk very consciously, when you know what to expect out of Symphogear GX, you just kind of start absorbing it. Which you don't get in, like, the like high-speed scrambler that is Symphogear Season 1 and to a lesser extent G Season 2. So yeah.
And the animation for this season's really good, but I think they put a lot of this show also. Let's just probably talk about it and get it out of the way. This season is the absolute worst for fan service so far.
Yep.
It's incredibly, like, in your face about it. And it's also the first time that the characters start reacting to it. Because a lot of times it was like, like, even in Symphogear G, when Chris, for some reason, is naked for no reason, she doesn't react to it, and none of the other characters react to it, so it seems kind of like, oh, weird, but okay. This season tries so hard to get the characters in terrible positions.
Yeah. It's a lot. It feels kind of like our running theory that, like, oh, they don't want to do fan service. That's a lot harder to sell for this season.
Yeah, like, so whenever they get, and once again, it's breaking their own rules of how the Symphogears work.
Mm-hmm.
It's, for some reason, when their Symphogears break, they're naked, and it doesn't add to anything. It doesn't. They don't frame it in a way of like, oh, you lost your weapons, or you're worthless. It's just like, you're naked.
Mm-hmm. And it never lasts very long. They always do it in awful camera shots. So again, it's not like it rarely takes that opportunity to try to, like, use it as something titillating, but it's far too in your face and, like, long lasting that it's no longer something that gets brushed by. Mm-hmm. It's too in your face to ignore, but they're also still not doing anything with it, and It just feels bad. Especially, like you mentioned, that characters are, like, calling attention to it when it's like they have, like, the headquarters people, and they're like, no, don't look, to, like, the male staff. And they're like, you're thinking about looking, aren't you? It's like, ugh. That definitely confirms that, like, they do have, like, cameras all over the place, and that's just kind of unsettling, from, like, that militaristic surveillance standpoint. But B, then it's just like, ew, like, don't go there. Like, I would... This seemingly was, like... I don't want to say they were ignoring it before, but, like, for some reason there's a semantic difference between the characters, you know, like, I guess because now suddenly that's being put as a higher priority than these characters' lives. As if, like, they're mentioning it as if it's something that's really, really important, rather than the whole, like, they don't have their weapons of protection or their armor, get them out of there.
Right.
Somehow that takes precedence, and that just, it's ugh.
Yeah. We also didn't mention, Elfnine, who is the Carol's homunculus, and her initial outfit is absolutely terrible. Like, no reason. She's basically wearing nothing but a cloak, and she is immediately put into a much better, respectable outfit later.
Which then raises the question, why did they bother?
Why? Well, yeah. Why did they give her this terrible outfit to start with?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense, and it's hard to say, like, oh, they don't want to do fan service. They're just being forced to by their producers, when, like, half the animations for their transformation scenes are sexualized in, like, 1 or 2 frames.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of it's fine. I think only, like, Sheraba has, like, a even remotely okay scene. Mm-hmm. The dark transformations where they turn into the like, dark versions are pretty okay for the most part.
They're occasionally better, yeah.
But the color schemes and the outfits for the dark ones are a lot better, I think. Sherba and Kirika did get an upgrade to their outfits. They actually are pretty good in this season. Compared to some of the other ones. We get a lot of, like, a lot more skin is shown in this outfit and the new outfits for the Symphogears, and it's, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it's...
And again, that doesn't make sense with what the show is trying to do, because this season's all about the Symphogears making contact with upgraded noise that can break their armor. So it's like, then this is no longer about the danger of skin contact where you don't have your Symphogear. This is about touching the Symphogear. So give them more Symphogear. Like, why are you taking it away? It's silly that they would make armor that they think they want it to look cool, and then they don't give them a lot of it. It's dumb.
Yeah, it's whack. So let's kind of break down some of the character arcs we see here, because this is the first season where I think each character has their own defined arc, despite being pretty intertwined. So Hibiki has more than just, I want to be the friend. And also, real quick, this show has a fairly fun beach episode. It's, first off, the first time they get a W. It's the first time that they kill one of the auto scorers. But for the most part, there's a couple really, really terrible shots. But for the most part, it's fine. And there's some really, like, nostalgic moments in that. Like, when they go to get snacks at the convenience store. That shit sent me back to when I went to Florida, like, a long, long time ago, and you just be on the beach, and you're like, I want to go to a 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee, and you just go. You, like, put on a t-shirt and go. Shit was my jam. You also got the bonding moments that we liked from Symphogear G that you did not get a lot. I mean, in Symphogear, that you didn't get a lot in Symphogear G, where they just kind of hung out. They fought the autoscorer like twice though during the beach episode, and that's when I started to get exhausted by them.
Yeah,
because I just wanted them to chill.
You start to realize just like how go Symphogear has been. The adrenaline wears off at that point. And you're ready to sort of see things start wrapping up. So, on one hand, I guess they made the right decision in, like, where to change the show's pace, but also, I would say, yeah, that's the point where it starts to wear on you, if it hadn't already.
I will say that episode was really, really good in terms of Maria's fight scene. It was really good. Where because that's the first time when she uses her Symphogears and Symphogear G. Her transformation scene is fun, and also Maria's character arc in this season's really good. They kind of pushed her away from being just Tsubasa Light, where she's suffering from dead sibling syndrome, and that's all her character is. She has a lot more to it. I think they play into that very well in this, but we'll talk about her in a bit. I want to talk about Hibiki. So Hibiki's whole shtick in this episode is that her dad is back, and he's kind of a piece of shit. It's pretty standard anime stuff. It's not the best dad is back story arc I've seen, but it's nice to see Hibiki have some other emotions other than happy and friend. What do you think about Hibiki in this season?
Yeah. I still think that they pile a lot on Hibiki, because before this we have the whole, like, oh, she can't sing to summon her Symphogear, which is a little interesting to start, but then when you look at the season as a whole, it's just like, it's one of those things, just, wow, they did cram that in there.
Yeah, I forgot that fucking happened.
Yeah, Symphogear G and GX in particular are trash compactor shows. They somehow managed to take this, like large quantity of just stuff and just crush it into like a very tidy cube, so much that you can only kind of see and remember what's on the outside, and everything on the inside gets lost really quickly. So like I've never been able to remember maybe like more than 25% of any given season of Symphogear. It's, you know, whatever surface level stuff is really entertaining or really striking, like the rogues gallery of villains with the autoscorers here, or stuff like Hibiki's dad being the trash that he is, or you know, other sort of like superficial stuff, like, you know, what characters do they bring back in this season, that kind of thing. That stuff is you know, sticks around, and it's like, it's highly visible. But a lot of other stuff, especially involving Hibiki, kind of gets just mashed to the middle.
Yeah,
but in general, I'll say that bringing her dad into the picture, is not a bad thing for the show's composition. I think it's a good shakeup. It's one of the more interesting things they do with Hibiki, because it's not directly related to her and her magical powers somehow functioning in a different way all of a sudden. It's just about her and who she is. And so that's neat.
Yeah. We also get to see Hibiki's grandma, who has the exact same hairstyle as her, and I thought that was cute.
Yeah. Do we want to close off this point about bad anime dad and our feelings on it?
Yeah, go. You start this conversation.
Okay, so bad anime dad. Wow, what do you think? No, kidding. It's the anime trope of like, hey, your bad anime dad is a bad anime dad, but he's still your dad, so you should probably make up with him anyways, and then let him back into your life without any kind of, you know, intuition enabling you to like listen to your critical thoughts. It's like, nope, shut that out. Just let dad back in. You know, and like, I on one end I get it, where like this show is not the type to like make a hard stance on that kind of thing necessarily. It's a little too upbeat and a little too optimistic to just suddenly throw that in there.
Right.
And they don't want Hibiki to be this breakable person who can like sort of draw a line. Hibiki has to be in that sort of classic shonen style Goku sense. She has to be impenetrably hopeful, so that other characters don't have to be. And then that destroys any kind of nuance that they're trying to set up with her bad dad. So yeah, it's not great. You're not going to learn anything from it. You're not going to feel like, you know, like, oh wow, that was really meaningful. It just kind of, you know, it does get Hibiki into like a new mode of thinking, but it's ultimately going to neutralize in the end, and that's disappointing.
Yeah,
expected but disappointing.
Yeah, and Tsubasa kind of has a similar character arc this season. It's a little bit better, I think, but it still revolves around her family and her dad specifically. So you learn in this season, that the Kazanari family is like super traditional, and they have like head of families, and it was supposed to be either her father or Genjuro. And when they were deciding who to be the next head of the Kazanari family, the dying grandma picked Tsubasa, who was a baby at the time. And her dad had like resented her for it the entire time. It's pretty whack shit, because one, she was a baby. Like, you can't hold a grudge against a baby, but he did. And you learn that throughout this entire process of her becoming, you know, the adult that she is in this season, she's always felt like she was just an extension and like the sword of the Kazanari family. And they talk about it in the previous season, so it's pretty whack that this character arc is like a 3-season character arc, where it's Tsubasa feeling that she isn't just a weapon, but she actually is a person. It's okay. I like the idea behind it, but it's jammed packed with everything else going on in this season, and it happens in like one episode that it feels really, really fast. Yeah.
You know what that almost reminded me of? This and Hibiki's dad in this season. It reminds me of a show that's very dear to our hearts, and so I have to unfortunately spoil this. But Gibiate.
Oh god.
And it's bad dad. Also feels in that same vein. Where it's like, I get it. I don't care, but I get it.
Yes, it wants you to. It wants you to care about something that just has not really been a thing. Because you get so much shit every single season, and you have so many characters you gotta get through, when it's like, oh, we're gonna delve into Tsubasa's complex that she has. You're like, who cares? I mean, you want to care. You want to look at Tsubasa getting through this and give a shit. But you can't. And then Chris in this season is nothing.
Chris never gets anything.
I feel so bad for her.
In a way, they're trying to make her like a surrogate mother for Kirika and Shirabe, but like, yeah, that's it. That's the extent of it. And so once again, like, she's getting responsibility put on her without like any kind of payoff, really, or relief. Even the resolution of that is that don't feel that way. And that's the end of it. She's still like, the most sexualized character. We still haven't really entirely unpacked, her being like a full-on villain from the first season.
Which is wild because Kirika, Shirabe, and Maria went to jail.
Yeah.
And they did less damage. As far as I know, they didn't murder anybody or be responsible for anyone's murder. Anytime that they summoned the noise, it was always under their control and only to fight the Symphogear users. What the it's so fucking stupid.
Yeah. Chris was, like, tortured and mentally manipulated into doing what she did, but they didn't unpack that either.
Right.
I wish that we got some on-screen therapy for Chris, and we just didn't, and that upsets me a lot.
Which, and it's whack that her only character arc is, I am older than Kirika and Shirabe, and I need to make sure that they have a role model, despite the fact that they have multiple.
Yeah. Plus, they also seemingly have kicked aside her, like, romantic potential with Tsubasa, which was already pretty fleeting, but now they're trying to pair up, seemingly, Tsubasa and Maria, and that's weird, because Maria's way older than the rest of them.
She's only 2 years older than Tsubasa, though.
Oh, that's right, Tsubasa is 18?
Tsubasa is 19 in GX, and Maria is 21.
Wow, shows what I know. I legitimately thought that Tsubasa was still, like, going to school with them.
No,
like
she...
upperclassman.
Because I remember talking about this in the last time. There is GX OVAs that deal with Tsubasa graduating and also B-Team going to school.
Okay.
They're like really, really cheap, like, web animation, like chibi stuff. They're charming. But they're that's it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Tsubasa is graduated as of GX and is 19. So okay, it's an okay relationship. I actually like some of their stuff in this season. They constantly, though, all the goddamn time, use swords as a euphemism for, like, sex.
Yeah.
Because they both have swords. And, like, it's not subtle, but it also doesn't make sense, like, at all. Like,
yeah, it's very clumsy. Which, granted, like, for these characters basically, having zero social life outside of, like, military combat for years, like, I guess that makes sense that they wouldn't have any kind of, like, like, romantic, like, poetic talent at all. But they're not playing it off like that. It's really jarring.
It's very silly.
And, like, hey, we support the cause that all lesbians deserve an array of swords and knives and bladed weapons, but the euphemism just kind of falls flat.
It just fucking sucks. They have some fun moments, though.
Hey, if you out there are a woman who loves women, or you identify as a lesbian in any way, just know familiar territory says you deserve a sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we need legislation in place to get people the swords they deserve. Come on.
Let's fucking petition it.
Yeah.
Get a nice machete. So let's move to Kirika and Shirabe for their character arcs for this season.
Okay.
They are very, very gay in this season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, they are holding hands, they are having talks about their relationship. I really dig it. But
they're not quite on the level of Hibiki and Miku, but
no.
They certainly are catching up. So that's fun.
They do a lot of their story arc's a little whack in terms of what's going on. Most of it is getting off of having to use linker, and making their Symphogear their own, and it's okay. I don't really think there is much to their character arc in this one. They do get some fun fight scenes though, especially when because each of them kills someone on the alchemist team. So, like, Maria kills Gari, Tsubasa kills the wind one. What's her name? Farah, and Shirabe and Kirika kill Micah, and then Chris kills Leur. And it's fun, but it seems that they have a few good episodes. I remember us watching the episode where they kind of reflect on not being able to fight, and then, like, kind of realizing that, they exist to fight for each other no matter what that means. And that was a really good episode where they, like, on the bridge at the end holding hands and looking at each other. I really digged that. But I really think that the big star of this season is Maria.
Which is weird for me to agree with, because, like, I actually don't entirely remember Maria's character thread, besides that, like, she did get her new Symphogear. She goes, back in the game. I feel like she's in the middle of the trash compactor cube for me, but despite the fact that I don't remember the facts of everything, I remember at the time thinking, like, yeah, Maria's getting good work put in for her, and that's nice.
Yeah, like, the moment that is really good for her is when she steals Gungnir from Hibiki again, because Hibiki can't sing. And she like, feels that, like, negative feeling of being weak. And then the beach episode happens where she teaches Elf9 how to play volleyball, and it like, is very heavy-handed about the symbolicism of trying your hardest even if you're not the best. And then she's so much more supportive in this season, and she's trying very hard to be a leader, and they do a really good job at showing that. And also her weapon is cool. It's like a knife gauntlet that can be a chain. I remember watching this episode and it's been a hot minute. Like, it's been about 6 years or so since I've watched all of GX, but seeing this episode made me really appreciate Maria's character. Mm-hmm. I feel like they really played into her trying to keep everyone together, despite the fact that she has her own stuff to deal with. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm a big fan of her character in this one.
Yeah, I'm the least upset at what Maria gets involved in. Like, she might not have like the spotlight, but she has the fewest amount of times where I thought, wow, that's dumb. There's just fewer of those like outright like excuse me kind of moments, like, that throw you out of it. So
also, she talks mad shit to the UN, and I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
She like straight up just like, fuck off, UN, I'm gonna go join Song. You don't own me. Now
you don't get to own me as a weapon. I'm gonna let someone else own me as a weapon.
That's fair. But at least Song has like 5 members, and as far as I know, none of them are corrupt.
And one of them is Kazunari, so
yeah. So if you were corrupt, he'd kill you. So there is one more character I want to talk about. I do want to mention that this episode had a severe lack of Kazunari. Like, a severe lack of
this whole season. Yeah, it's sad.
The
one good dad who should have been perhaps like the undergirding of this season full of bad dads. It gets basically like no interaction. It's really upsetting.
It is, especially because like I would have loved to see him like sit down with Tsubasa, because they're in the same family, right? I would love to see him sit down with her and explain, how he feels about her as an uncle, or even talk about how the big part to try and redeem Tsubasa's dad is that her room is a mess from when she was a kid, and Maria points out that the room was actually clean. He just did not clean up any of Tsubasa's mess that she left when she left home. And that shows that he cared about her, and he wanted to keep the room the same because it reminded him of her, which would have been really, really sweet had he not been a total piece of shit constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have been nice to see Kazunari kind of unpack these feelings with the girls. He doesn't really get to do much this season, which is really, really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Miku has a little bit bigger of a role in this one. She actually hangs out with all the Symphogear girls constantly, which is really nice because you get to see her interact with Hibiki a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I dig that. I really like their relationship in this one. It's more of the same, but that's good.
At least that then communicates that this is a constant, and that's nice. She pops up at HQ a whole lot.
Yeah, they
do basically chills there now.
They do not give a shit that she knows everything about it. There is a really weird scene, I forgot about this. Speaking of trying to keep things a secret, where Chris goes to save Elf9 during the initial first episode.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris like hides her face, and she's like, "I'm Little Red Riding Gun," which implies that all the characters have superhero names and they have like secret identities.
Or that's just Chris being Chris.
Yeah, but like Hibiki's dad did point out that he saw Hibiki in Symphogear, and he was like, "Yeah, this girl saved the moon, and it looked a lot like you." Shit's whack. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But the real big player in this one is the return of Tony Glazer.
Mm-hmm.
He lets Tsubasa out of her contract because he wants her to continue to pursue whatever she wants, and basically says, "Hey, Tsubasa, if you ever want to come back to the world of music, you let me know." And boys, Tony Glazer's just a bro. He's... I mean, they could have done a whole thing with him being like a shitty manager or whatever, but he
could have put up a fight about it or something, but...
Nah, man. He doesn't. Tony Glazer's a fucking bro.
It's amazing how, like, when this show doesn't get things wrong, it's just this thank God moment. I don't know. Yeah. It feels like, because of what Symphogear is on, like, an aesthetic and, like active level, like what the characters are actively doing, they don't need to get a lot right for this to be entertaining, so they have to minimize what they get wrong. If I had to make a bad analogy, which I always will, Symphogear Season 1 is like a really thin soup with really chunky ingredients in it. But Symphogear G and GX are like this really like fine paste. It's really uniform in terms of its texture. But it's more consistent. That's good because, you know, if you like what Symphogear G and GX are, then you're just going to get that readily and steadily. But it also means it's really easy to notice, like, oh, that's like a weird chunk in there. What's going on there? Like, you're just going to feel it instantly. So they do have it hard in that sense. Symphogear Season 1 gets to be clunky all over the place. And that's just what it is. You know, there wasn't a standard set yet. But now Symphogear G and GX have to really kind of even things out, or else it stands out in the long run. So right.
And I think it's pretty damn even.
And it is fun. Like you mentioned, like the auto scores and their dance moves and how they move around being related to their dances. That's really cool. They have some really fun poses that are just good to look at. It's just, there's just exciting stuff. Fights feel a little more dynamic. There's less super moves going on.
And when they do the super moves, it's normally like a very impactful thing.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about Maria's super move she uses on Gari to kill her, and you were that was the first time I've ever seen you get relatively hype over a Symphogear fight scene.
Yeah, because it's like, I think that move was Serenade, right? And
yeah.
So it's named after her sister, Serena, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, you know, it's like, oh, that's meaningful. That came together.
And it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
I believe, overall, I think Maria's transformation scene is pretty okay, too. Her outfit's not super good. It's just missing pants. Like, that's it. Or, like, a long skirt. Other than that, it's pretty good.
I remember, like, the butt/crotch shot was still gratuitous, but regardless.
But I feel like if her outfit wasn't terrible, that wouldn't have been a bad scene. But the outfit was bad. But Dr. Vare comes back.
Oh, God.
I know you forgot about that.
No, I mean, I definitely was prepared to talk about it before, but we got so far away from it that,
it's kind of whack because he has sort of a redemption arc where he finally gets to be the hero by stopping the alchemists from happening. I do want to talk about Carol's terrible transformation scene, and I want to talk about its connection to like magical girl history. I think that's important. Carol has a Symphogear, and it's fun because it's like a puppet. It's puppet strings that are like in the shape of a harp, and it makes really cool like string sounds when it snaps. She has a fun hat, which is a big thing for us. What the problem is the transformation scene is like super classic magical girl with like giant like growing tits and horrible like clothes ripping.
Well, yeah, it's somewhere in between, or I guess a synthesis of like Melmo and Cutie Honey, where Carol, who is, you know, aesthetically, from best we can tell, a child, when she transforms, she grows up into the body of like either like a late teenager or an adult, and in the process, like essentially they're like revealing her very sexually, and that's fucked. It's always been fucked. Like I really don't have any care for going back to the series I just mentioned, because the former Melmo is like a Tezuka production that was about sex education, and it's horny in bad ways that don't involve education. Particularly like this, it's a child character who, you know, essentially can magically grow up into an adult, and they use that for sexualization purposes. Like it's almost always gagged, where, you know, another character sees her in like her shrunken clothing, basically, relatively, and then they'll like hit on her or like, you know, abuse her or whatever, etc. It's bad. And then the latter, Cutie Honey, it was like I would say a landmark in sexualized transformation scenes, where, you know, the one of the big points is that when Honey transforms, her clothes rip off and then like the suit reforms on her. And so you'll see a lot of these manga drawings or anime stills of like, all right, this is deliberately like, there's a whole, the big deal is that the suit is the clothes are coming off and the suit is going on. And there's multiple stages to this, and it's just kind of creepy and bad. And I know, in case there's people out there who actually really care about Cutie Honey, which I'm sure there are, I just don't know if they're listening to this. I know that she's an android, but she's an android designed to be a 16-year-old girl. So fuck out of here with that shit. It's just nasty. Don't like it.
Yeah, no.
And Carol is both of those bad elements put together.
100%. It's pretty fucking whack. I don't understand why they felt the need to do that, considering the fact that they could have just kept her as an adult-looking character and just done it with that. And like, it's pretty strange.
It wants to have its cake and eat it too. Once again, very transparently. It's, you know, it's just not sensible either. It doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's all I gotta say about Symphogear GX. Do you have any final thoughts regarding the show?
Just that, like, I know I've dogged it a lot, but I do think it is the better piece of Symphogear media we've seen. I mean it when I say it's fun. And it's not always like, oh, it's better, but it's just, there's something like at like the low level stimulus of the show that's just more entertaining. It's more popcorny with less to get in the way of that. Or at the very least, it's spikes of it that allow you to coast longer. I don't know, there's just weird, goofy things about the show that are just kind of entertaining. When they're in their headquarters and you see like they have like a wallpaper of just like cubes falling endlessly through like water, it's just like, what the fuck is going on there? What is that? Well, okay, cool. They change scenery a lot. Yeah, they go to a lot of different places, and some of those places are pretty striking looking. The first engagement with the autoscorers, having this like nighttime scene, it's sort of like with harsh street lighting, is pretty neat. And I do like the autoscorers, as tropey as they are. They're basically just like, it's more of the Symphogear, like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the usual anime stigmatized psychosis. It was like, you know, like, I'm crazy, I'm evil, which is boring, but the dumb things that they do and say are at least entertaining as nuggets of information. So yeah, I for all of my criticisms of it, I still stand by that this is perhaps, the best of Symphogear that we've seen so far. Do you think that people would you suggest people jump to Symphogear GX like you ended up accidentally doing, or would you recommend they start from the beginning and try from there?
I think if you wanted to get someone to watch Symphogear, you would show them the rocket scene. You would show them that. You would be like, this is Symphogear. But you gotta start at the beginning. There's just, you have to, going straight to GX separates you from the wacky rules and universe that the show is. So if you start in GX, you're like, okay, what are relics? What's the purpose of the Symphogear? Why are these characters different from these characters? I think there is some meat to the story of this show. I don't think it's necessarily good, but it's like an all-you-can-eat buffet. We're just fucking laying on these food
analogies. That's a great way to put it, actually.
But it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. You can. There's a lot to eat, but not all of it's great. But
you
still
need
to
be a little cold.
But you need to eat it because you paid $10 for it, and you're not going to have some shitty cake as your only thing you're eating. You paid $10. You got to get the most of it. Mm-hmm. I think that I do remember you saying that. I remember watching GX with you, and it was the only one we were able to power through. A lot of times when we were watching Symphogear or Symphogear G, you would need to take a break just to kind of separate yourself from the episodes.
Yeah. That's another thing, too. Yeah, it doesn't feel like this one's quite as much of a drain.
I think it's... I honestly think it's because the characters get to have a little bit more fun.
Yeah. I'd agree.
Yeah, so...
Let's talk about some themes.
Ooh, we got some themes. Now, are these different than Symphogear G and Symphogear?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I feel like I've effectively pulled my weight this time, but it was not easy. The Symphogear does not make this easy on me. It's not like Arjuna, where they just like speak it to you and grab you by the shoulders and shake you with it.
Humans bad.
Yeah.
Do not go on the internet.
Symphogear is a much more nuanced show in which when these characters have to deal with their bad dads, they can't just do it by inhaling colored smoke that's projecting out of their mouths that conveys their emotions. Instead, they just have to do a very bad job of interpreting everything that's being said to them.
God, fucking Arjuna. You know what? Wait, real quick. Do you think that your enjoyment of Symphogear GX might have been because Arjuna was such a slog to get through?
Maybe.
Because do you think that it's sort of like how when Magical Girl Sight made us like Tokyo Mew Mew a lot more?
Yeah. I think it had something to do with it. I don't want to say it's the only reason why Symphogear GX was more palatable for me, but I think it's part of it. Mm-hmm. So yeah. That's that. I couldn't give you the percentages. I couldn't give you the ratio, but it definitely is influential in some, capacity. So way back with our Symphogear G review, I made some joke about how Symphogear reaffirms my beliefs as a constructivist from an epistemological or ontological perspective.
Hey
how
guys.
I see the world and how I see knowledge. What?
Welcome to Familiar Territory, an anime podcast where we talk about how we hate sexualized characters, and also, is the world real?
Haha, he said piss.
Sorry for cutting you off.
Epistemology is the study of the piss. Anyways, cogent discussion aside, let's focus. I actually think that my thematic breakdown of the show had to begin with is Symphogear GX actually about constructivism. So, woo! That came back around. Because, okay, so they introduced the villains as having, like, alchemy as their, like, magic source, sort of. It's like Carol comes from, like, a time of alchemy, and that's what her dad got killed over. Like they executed her dad for alchemy.
Real quick, I do want to say she was like, they killed him for doing science. They thought he was a wizard. And I'm like, your alchemy is very magic-like. So
yeah,
dude was a wizard. He didn't deserve to be killed. But stop trying to pretend he's some sort of scientist when he could make lightning.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, he's like maybe like one of the few good dads, but he's also a good dad in the sense of like he didn't do anything wrong. The end.
He also had a beautiful hat.
He did.
He had a big hat.
He had a big hat. Okay. So, anyways, their whole thing with the alchemy stuff is like, well, to use alchemy, you have to be able to break something down to see its components, or like it, almost like the atomic level of it or molecular level, and then you can understand it well enough to build it back up and manipulate it or create it or whatever. Break down, build back up is their whole thing. It's why they're saying like I have to dissect the world, which is I think a really bad way to put it. But wording aside, so the whole angle of the villains in this season is deconstruction, not and I should use that lightly because like deconstruction from like the Derrida original perspective is not really like, it's not utilitarian in the sense that like I'm going to deconstruct something. It's more like I am not qualified to lay this out because it's very hard for me to grapple with, but it's more about understanding that something is composed of itself as much as it is its opposite. So like you might deconstruct hot by understanding that it is not cold. That process of deconstruction is not necessarily you making a decision on its behalf or analyzing something. Rather, it's an acknowledgement of what is understood, sort of. So, like, no, we're not going to say Symphogear GX is a deconstruction of the magical girl genre. Like, I would never have the confidence to say that about any show.
Sailor Moon.
Can you elaborate?
Oh.
Okay, cool. Thought so. But in like the casual sense of the word, to say that we're deconstructing things down into smaller pieces and then reconstructing them, that's how the show functionally works here in this season. And that's also what the characters are going through. This is sorry, I have to work my way through this because I didn't get there right away. But this is the Who Am I season, where just as common as characters dealing with parental issues is also them dealing with like, who am I really? To throw out some examples, Hibiki's kind of figuring out the whole like, why do I fight? What is my voice? What's my part in this? Subasa's trying to figure out, how do I be a human weapon and also a human alone. The Kurika and Shirabe and Chris are in this sort of like triangle of trying to protect each other without being a burden, or bearing that responsibility of I need to be the one who essentially takes the heat so that the others don't have to. And so everyone's trying to figure out, like, where do I fit in here? And so when they get beaten, that's like the collaborative inquiry of them challenging who they are. It's, what brings it up in the first place. Hibiki goes to fight. She can't sing. Why is that? Who even am I? That's like the trigger. And then as they fight and they think and they fight and they think and they say a lot of things.
There's a little too much thinking going on in your...
they eventually they build a more resilient understanding of themselves, right? So maybe it's not, maybe it doesn't make a whole ton of sense from the outside looking in, but in world the characters are finding resolve, and so the whole part of being a person and breaking things down and building them back up in terms of like learning theory is that when you're doing this process, essentially you tend to make more sense of it the next time around. That when someone challenges your way of thinking, if you can break it down and build it back up, you're factoring more in, and so therefore you have a more complete picture. The structure is a little more stable. And all these like schema essentially make a little more sense together. The Ignite modules are kind of their physical representation that the characters got stuff figured out. It's just kind of like, hey, your internal discord has been settled. And it's not exceptionally novel or anything. Like, it is what it is. But it's something. It's an indicator that they got over the hump. So this season is not so much about communication as, seeing that, like, basically the whole plot of this show is about Carol having a misunderstanding from what her dad told her, and then taking that to an extreme and trying to destroy the world in the process, which is dumb. So communication theme, out the window, whatever, doesn't matter anymore. If we're looking at what happens here, it's about the characters essentially building themselves, right? Reasonable?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They might change. They might learn something about themselves. But, in my opinion, the characters don't actually really... They're not any different in terms of who they are. They're just acknowledging what it is that they are. So, like, for example, Chris is like, I have to be the responsible one. And then she learns, no, I guess I don't have to be. Which is not to say that she did become more responsible or less responsible. She's just the same person as she was before, but she's not beating herself up over it. Multiply that times every character in the show. Including the villain, including Carol, who literally accepts herself at the end and absorbs her own homunculus.
So just real quick.
Yeah.
Opposite. Elf9 absorbed Carol.
Oh.
But they're the same person, the same memories. So like,
okay, that's my bad.
I looked it up because I was confused. I couldn't remember. I'm just letting you know.
Okay, yes. So absorption happens because they accept I am you, you are me, we're one and the same. And then that is that. But then that means we can't really look at this as like necessarily as they're they're not exactly advancing or growing, right? This is not a show about growth. If this is a show about growth, then essentially we would get something more formative out of Hibiki and her dad, or Tsubasa and her dad. Instead, it's just them acknowledging, no, they always kind of cared, and they kind of didn't, and we'll work with that. Everything's kind of just in the same place. All the dead characters are still dead. You want to play volleyball? Well, you play it how you want, because volleyball is just hitting the ball. We just hit the ball, okay? All right, and then that's the scene. All the power structures that we're used to in the show are pretty much still intact. Like, some people quit some things that they were doing, whether it's the UN or singing career, etc. But like, those things haven't gone away or changed. They're just, exact same as before. As the character saying, well, I can't do what I need to do while I'm here doing this also, so that's no longer happening. So if I have to reduce it down, boil it down to something, Symphogear GX is about acceptance. It's not about who you are, or what you do, or what you're chemically made of. It's just about how you're you. How do you actualize yourself? How do you perceive yourself? That's all that matters, Symphogear is not about becoming a better person. It's about saying, oh, this is the person that I am. And so that took a while for me to get around to. I had a couple stages of this theorizing where it's like, I don't know if this theme is really making sense. And like, even as we were watching, I was panicking a little bit because I was like, I've got nothing. I don't know what this show is trying to say to me. But it struck me today in reviewing some clips of the show, why it was so hard for me to understand it. Boys don't know this.
Oh my fucking god, you got me.
Grant, it doesn't have to be beef.
I'm fucking crying, dude.
Beef stroganoff doesn't. It is beef stroganoff because you perceive it to be. The composition of it doesn't actually matter all that much.
I hate you so much. Okay.
Let's do some hypotheticals. How about that?
Yeah, I got a hypothetical for you.
Okay.
Just to go off your beef stroganoff reference, your friends have had the worst week of their lives. Their cars have been broken into. They've lost all of their belongings, and the world is slowly coming to an end. What food do you sing about in a happy tune?
What the fuck?
What food do you sing about?
I have to think about what food makes me happy to make. I guess mushrooms?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like making mushrooms.
Nice. Mine would be.
This feels as anticlimactic as the actual scene of the show.
I would talk about rice and egg.
What? I was fucking hoping that you would have something better than me, so that we could 1-2 punch it. You know what? No, this makes more sense. This is how this was supposed to go. Okay. It's okay. I have an equally difficult to answer hypothetical to return fire. I can give my answer first on this one in case you need time to think. What everyday phrase or demand would you horribly misinterpret into a mantra for world annihilation, Grant?
Oh, that's a good one. I gotta think of something.
Okay, mine would have to be just do your best. Because that is actually something that I live by, but it's that double-edged sword of like, it means give yourself a break, but also you're like, well, what is my best? This isn't my best, and then you just keep pushing yourself, and you develop this toxic relationship internally where you're trying to prove that you're something that you're not, because you didn't understand the whole point of the beef stroganoff scene, Brantley, you fool. Yeah, so that's mine.
That's good. So some of my students that I talk to, when they're mad at me for telling them to do their work and telling them to stop talking, they'll look at me and they'll say less, as like a sassy comeback. Basically saying shut up, but in a way they think that I don't understand. Because the whole like phrase is supposed to be like say less, do more. Mm-hmm. So I would take that and I would do more and overthrow the governments and become a leader of a social revolution. All because my students wouldn't sit down and do their homework.
Direct action involves a Dead Rising-esque scenario in which Grant takes someone's picket sign and actually just starts whooping ass.
All right.
So somewhere along the line, you level up and you learn a new way to hit someone with it, and just everything works out. You
know. So what's your? Do you have anything? Any other?
I did have like tangentially. We just finished watching season 1 of Megalobox last night. And well, I had seen it before and I got to see it again. Grant got to see it for the first time.
It's very good.
And so after I worked up the hypothetical, I realized that Megalobox is like would have a really good one. Because Joe mentions, so spoilers for Megalobox a little bit. He's like, when I'm anxious, or I'm feeling scared, I just touch something, and that helps him feel grounded. And so I just like to imagine that that's what got him into
punching people.
Essentially, yeah, into Bloodsport, in the sense that it's like, well, I feel better, I feel more grounded when I'm touching things. So I'm going to get into a sport which is all about touching things as hard as I can. That's just a wild leap. That I know they didn't mean to do that, but it's just very funny in retrospect. Okay, perhaps the most important question we're ever going to have on this podcast, Grant. I'm not a big fan of like fuck, marry, kill, so I've instead devised a different version of that. Dad, uncle, and grandpa, Kazunari, Ogawa, and Tony Glazer.
Okay. Ogawa is definitely an uncle. He's a ninja, right? Like that dude is never having kids because that's too much being tied down. Although he will adopt a teenager to be his trainee, but he will not have kids, but he will be an uncle. Ogawa is the uncle. I want Tony Glazer as my dad. Because Tony Glazer lets me do whatever I want. But he's always there to have my back. And Kazunari, he has big grandpa energy, man. All he wants to do is sleep and watch movies. He will kick ass. And you don't know why he'll kick ass, but he will. And also, I'm sure that dude had... Like, that dude, he probably has, like, a bowl of candy everywhere. There's no way that he doesn't.
Oh man.
What's your uncle, dad, grandpa?
So this is hard because I like your answers, but I don't want to just steal them. So my original answers, if I didn't convert to yours, I would have said Kazunari is dad. I think because he in the show he doesn't have kids, although like he's got then like almost like perfect uncle energy. Mm-hmm. I think applying that as like surrogate dad energy becomes a good base dad energy. Let's see. Tony Glazer feels like an uncle in the sense that like he's eccentrically like a working dude in like a high space. He's got connections. He's in production. He's doing, that sort of thing where it's like you don't ever know exactly what he does, but he does work and he does get a lot of money, or at least enough to look like a classy dude most of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that to me, it's like I think Tony Glazer makes sense at a distance. So then I guess as a result, despite his youthful energy, Ogawa then falls into Grandpa Zone.
Grandpa Zone.
Which doesn't entirely make sense, but it maybe in the sense that like Ogawa's got secrets,
like
and you kind of, yeah, like I think he would have fun grandpa tricks.
Yes,
where it's like where he does like a substitution to like replace your rubber eraser with a Werther's original, or something like that. So yeah, that's my rationality on it. It's mostly on like feel and vibe.
No, that's good. I dig that. So before we end this episode, if you don't have anything else to say,
I'm good.
I sent you on Discord the Symphogear AZX bingo sheet.
Oh, this is a thing that exists?
No, I made it. I made it today. Today. So I made a bingo sheet that has some predictions for Symphogear AZX. With the free space, Galsby and pals. Notable inclusions in this bingo sheets, and I'll try and figure out a way to share it. We'll post it in the bottom of the YouTube link or something.
We can link you can tweet it.
Yes, I can tweet it. That's a good idea. Some of my favorite ones are tragic backstory for villain, global political intrigue, rap battle, and dead soldiers. So,
oh man, I think my favorite is a whole new kind of noise. Oh no, I get it now. I didn't realize it meant like the noise is like the alien creatures. For some reason, I just thought like strictly as in like someone was gonna make some fucked up sound. Or like
It's both.
You remember in Yuki Yuna where there's that one part
where she makes the high pitched squeal? Yep.
I'm still not over that.
That's so good. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed what you listened to, go check out some of our other things. We have a Twitter. You
gotta keep up to date on what we're gonna do next.
Oh shit, that's right. So, in about 2 weeks, we will be hitting our 1-year anniversary for our podcast, which is fun. We'll be doing a collection of the most times where I've laughed incredibly loud and dramatically.
Yeah, we're gonna try to do a compilation as our like annual event. So
yeah,
find some funny bits, mash them together.
But saying that, we also have an episode planned. We are going to go into our next fun familiar territory and continue our Danganronpa saga with Danganronpa 2.
Goodbye Despair. But not Goodbye Danganronpa, because there's another one after that.
There's another one. So if you want to check out some of our wacky good times, we have a Twitter. Will be linked in the description. I tweet random garbage constantly. You can like, subscribe, or comment. I do love reading some comments. Or you don't need to do any of that, because we are not a Renaissance era alchemist bent on destroying the world using magic.